Welcome to the Drunken Zombies Podcast, your daily dose of zombie tales. I'm Adrian, your host.
And I'm Julia, here to help us dissect these brines, metaphorically speaking, of course.
We're diving into a story today called the Z-Zone. It throws us into this future where humans are all huddled up in these massive ecodomes called Z-Zones to survive, the whole zombie apocalypse thing.
Yeah, but this one is not your typical zombie survival story. It's more about, power, rebellion, and there are all these dark secrets hidden beneath this utopia.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Okay, so before we get to all the juicy bits, paint us a picture.
Okay.
What are these Z-Zones really like?
So imagine, a world completely overrun by zombies.
Okay.
These Z-Zones, they're these giant biodomes that offer a haven from all the chaos outside, right? Inside life is super structured, safe, sustainable. They've got their own ecosystems, their own technology, everything they need to survive,
So it's like a trade-off then, safety and order in exchange for freedom.
Right.
I don't know. I'm already sensing some red flags.
Oh yeah, you're right to be suspicious. This story focuses on Dome 7, specifically. It's ruled by this regime that takes control to a whole new level, right? It's less about protecting the people and more about, keeping them in check.
Okay, now you've really got me hooked.
Yeah.
So who are the characters that are going to shake things up in this dome?
Let's start with Alex. He's this brilliant engineer who's totally dedicated to keeping Dome 7 running, right? At first, he totally believes in the system, trusts the regime, you know the deal, but then he uncovers this truly horrifying secret.
Okay, what is it? What does he find that, totally shatters his faith in the dome?
He stumbles upon the regime's twisted form of entertainment, zombie gladiator fights.
What?
Yeah.
They're, pitting these undead prisoners against each other, for sport?
Yeah, in these brutal spectacles. And it's not some underground secret thing,
Right.
Higher-ranking officials, even ordinary citizens are, cheering in the stands. It's just casual cruelty that's become totally normal.
Wow. That's chilling. I mean, it makes you wonder who the real monsters are in this story, right?
Right. And it forces you to confront the question, when survival is on the line, what lines are we willing to cross? But, the gladiator fights are just the tip of the iceberg. What really pushes Alex to rebel is what happens to his close friend, Lena.
Oh, okay. I'm sensing this isn't going to be good. What happens to Lena?
So Lena gets caught vandalizing, a propaganda poster, right?
Okay.
It's a minor act of rebellion, really, but the punishment is shocking.
Yeah.
They infect her,
What?
turning her into a zombie.
They turned her into a zombie for vandalism. Talk about overkill.
Yeah, it's a brutal demonstration of their power,
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury, they throw Lena into the gladiator pit for the crowd's amusement.
Oh, jeez. So this is what, breaks Alex.
This is it, yeah.
Huh.
This is what makes him snap. He can no longer just stand by and watch the regime exploit and dehumanize both the living and the dead,
Yeah, I bet that lit a fire under him. It's one thing to, question the system, but to witness a friend suffer like that?
Yeah.
That's a whole other level of motivation.
Definitely, yeah. This is the turning point in the story. This is where Alex decides to join the rebellion that's been simmering beneath the surface.
Okay, so there are others who feel the same way then. Tell me about this rebellion. Who are these people?
Oh, it's not just a few disgruntled citizens. This is a whole network of people who are just fed up with the regime, right? They're organized, they've got a plan, they're ready to fight back. Alex soon finds himself working with this guy, Jules, who's the charismatic leader. He knows how to rally the troops,
Yeah, that's what every good rebellion needs, right? The spark and someone to, fan the flames into a wildfire.
Exactly.
So what's their first move? How do they go up against this super oppressive regime?
They decide to go for this bold digital strike.
Okay.
Their plan is to hack into the dome's broadcast system and expose the truth about the regime's cruelty to everyone.
Oh, so a classic information war, right? Control the narrative, control the people.
Exactly.
Did it work? Were they able to pull it off?
Almost. But the regime had way more security protocols than they anticipated.
Oh.
So the hack fails, and the consequences are pretty severe.
Yeah. I can only imagine the crackdown after that. What happened to the rebels?
The regime, raided their hideout and captured a lot of them.
Oh, no.
Alex and a few others barely escaped, but it was a devastating blow,
So strike one, major loss. What do they do next? Do they, double down or try a different approach?
Their next plan is even riskier. They target the zombie labor fields.
Hold on, zombie labor fields, what are those?
So remember how we said the regime exploits both the living and the dead?
Yeah,
They use zombies for all the dirty and dangerous jobs.
right.
These fields are where they keep the zombies, forcing them to work under constant control.
That's a pretty horrifying thought.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the rebels saw an opportunity there.
Exactly. They wanted to liberate the zombies, disrupt the dome's food supply, and really expose just how reliant the regime is on the very creatures they claim to fear, you know? It was a bold move, for sure, aiming to strike at the heart of the dome's operations.
So did it work? Were they able to pull it off?
This mission was an even bigger disaster than the first.
Oh no. What went wrong this time?
They totally underestimated the regime's preparedness. They walked into an ambush, completely outnumbered and outgunned. Many were captured or killed.
2 strikes, 2 major losses. It sounds like this rebellion is on its last legs.
It was a devastating setback for sure, both in terms of manpower and morale. And to make matters worse, the regime used this failure to really tighten their grip on the dome.
How so? Did they increase security or something?
They went way further than that. They launched this full-blown propaganda campaign, branding the rebels as terrorists, enemies of the state. They played on people's fears, and it worked.
A classic move, right?
Yeah.
Turn the people against the ones who are actually fighting for their freedom.
Totally. So, support for the rebellion just dwindled, replaced by suspicion and distrust.
So what do Alex and the remaining rebels do now? How do you even come back from that?
Faced with impossible odds, they have a choice, right? Surrender or risk everything on one final desperate gamble.
This sounds like we're heading for a nail-biting climax. What do they decide to do?
Well, you'll have to wait for the next part to find out. We're just getting to the good part.
Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back to dive into the thrilling conclusion of the Z-Zone. We're back with the Drunken Zombies Podcast, and things are getting really intense in the Z-Zone. Our rebels are totally backed into a corner facing impossible odds.
It's a true test of their resolve. They've lost allies, public opinion has turned against them, and the regime is just more powerful than ever.
So what's their next move? How do you even fight back when everything seems lost?
They decide to go for the heart of the beast, a direct assault on the dome's control center.
Whoa, talk about a high-stakes gamble. What are they hoping to achieve with this attack?
It's a two-pronged plan. First, they want to dismantle the system that broadcasts the zombie gladiator fights.
Okay.
Cutting off the regime's twisted entertainment.
Yeah, that's a symbolic victory for sure. Striking at the heart of the regime's cruelty.
But it's more than symbolic, right? Their main objective is to hijack the dome's broadcast system and finally, reveal the truth to everyone trapped inside.
Oh, so they're going for a full-on information coup. It's their last chance to sway public opinion and expose the regime's lies.
Exactly. It's a do-or-die mission. If they succeed, they could spark a real revolution, wake up the people who have been brainwashed by the regime's propaganda.
But if they fail?
It's game over, capture, execution, the end of the rebellion. There's no room for error.
This is it then. The final showdown. Paint us a picture of this assault. How does it go down?
So they managed to infiltrate the control center through the domes, like underbelly, right? But it quickly becomes clear that it's a trap.
Wait, the regime knew they were coming.
It seems so. It's an ambush, a fierce firefight erupts, and the whole control center just becomes a war zone.
This is the kind of action sequence that gets your heart pounding.
Yeah.
Were they able to fight their way through?
Despite the ambush, Alex and a handful of rebels managed to, break through the regime's forces and barricade themselves inside the control center.
They're in, but they're not out of the woods yet. What happens next?
With Mara, their hacker extraordinaire, working like crazy, they seize control of the broadcast system. It's a tense moment as they begin transmitting their message, the truth about the regime's atrocities, across the entire dome.
I can just imagine people watching their screens in shock as the horrifying reality of the gladiator fights, the zombie labor, the brutal punishments all come flooding in.
It's a powerful turning point in the story. For a brief moment, it seems like the rebellion might actually succeed, but their victory is short-lived.
What happened? Did the regime cut the feed?
Worse, the regime forces break into the control center, and this brutal hand-to-hand fight just erupts.
I bet this is where the story really gets brutal. What happens to the rebels?
Outnumbered and outmatched, the rebels fight valiantly, but, one by one they fall, until only Alex is left standing.
That's heartbreaking. Facing the full force of the regime alone. What does he do?
He fights with everything he's got, driven by the memory of Lena and the sacrifices of his comrades. But it's a hopeless battle. He's overwhelmed, captured, and the broadcast is cut off.
It seems like the rebellion has been crushed. What does the regime do with Alex? Do they throw him in the gladiator pit as a final insult?
They decide to make an example of him, a public execution in the central plaza, to instill fear and obedience in the dome's population.
That's cold. To be betrayed by the people you're trying to save, then publicly executed by the very system you're fighting against? It's a cruel fate.
As Alex is being led to his execution, beaten and broken, something unexpected happens.
What? A last-minute rescue? A deus ex machina?
Something far more powerful, a testament to the impact of Alex's sacrifice.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What happens?
The people of the dome, the ones who've been living in fear, controlled by the regime's propaganda, they finally snap.
What triggers this sudden shift?
Seeing Alex, the engineer who dedicated his life to keeping the dome running, being led to his death for daring to speak the truth, it's like a breaking point for them.
The silent majority finally finds their voice. It's like the spark of rebellion that Alex ignited just couldn't be extinguished, even by his capture.
The crowd erupts. Chaos spreads through the plaza, and the regime's carefully constructed order just crumbles.
This is giving me chills. It's a true people's revolution, a testament to the enduring power of hope and resistance. What does the rebels do?
The remaining rebels, the ones who have been hiding, waiting for their moment, they seize the opportunity and launch a surprise attack.
Wow, so they were underground this whole time, ready to strike when the time was right. It's like watching a carefully orchestrated dance of chaos.
The plaza just descends into this full-blown battle as citizens join the rebels, fighting back against the regime's enforcers.
A true uprising. But what about Alex? Is he rescued in the chaos?
He is. In the frenzy of the uprising, Alex is freed from his captors and rejoins the fight, helping to secure their hard-won victory over the regime.
This is epic. The people have risen up, the regime is defeated, and our hero is free. What happens in the aftermath of this revolution?
That's where the story shifts gears, focusing on the challenges of, rebuilding a shattered society and forging a new path forward. But we'll have to save that discussion for the final part of our episode.
Don't worry, listeners. We're not leaving you hanging. We'll be right back to explore the aftermath of the revolution and unravel the mysteries of those other domes. Okay, we're back for the final round on the Drunken Zombies Podcast. And things are about to get really interesting as we wrap up the Z-Zone.
Yeah.
The rebellion has triumphed, the bad guys are gone.
Right.
But the story doesn't end there, does it?
No, not at all. The Z-Zone isn't one of those stories that gives you a simple happily ever after, It really digs into, what it actually takes to rebuild a society after this kind of trauma. I mean, the dome is in chaos. There's so much healing and restructuring to do.
Right.
And then there's that whole bombshell about the other domes out there.
Yeah, that's what I really want to talk about. The story just throws this curveball at us right at the end, revealing that Dome 7 isn't alone. Suddenly, we've got this whole network of domes, each with its own potential for stories and struggles and...
Right. It's brilliant, really. It just expands the whole scope of the story. You realize that this fight was just a tiny piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Yeah, it's like those final scenes in a superhero movie where they hint at a whole universe of characters and conflicts, right? What are these other domes like? Are they all under the thumb of these oppressive regimes? Are there other rebellions brewing out there?
Those are the exact questions the story leaves us with, right? It just sparks your imagination, making you wonder if Dome 7's victory is just the beginning of something much bigger.
It's that moment of hope and uncertainty you feel after a revolution, right?
Yeah.
There's this relief that the tyranny is over, but then you realize the real work has just begun.
Exactly. And what about, communication between these domes? Are they completely isolated, or is there some way for them to connect, share knowledge, maybe even form alliances, right? Against a common enemy.
It really makes you think about, the power of shared experiences, right?
Yeah.
And that potential for solidarity, even in this fragmented world.
Definitely. And amidst all this speculation, there's this, sense of optimism, A belief that even in a world, ravaged by a zombie apocalypse, humanity can find a way to rebuild and create something better.
Yeah, I mean, the Z-Zone doesn't shy away from showing us the dark side of human nature, but it also reminds us that we're capable of resilience, hope, change.
It's powerful, really. It's what makes it more than just another zombie tale.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to the zombie labor fields for a second. We talked about how messed up it was, but the story never really explains how it's even possible, right?
You're right. The mechanics of controlling zombies are kind of vague, which adds this layer of mystery, right?
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder, could something like that ever exist in real life? And what would that even mean? Ethically, I mean.
It's those unanswered questions that keep the story with you.
Yeah.
You finish the book, but the conversation keeps going.
It's the mark of great storytelling, really. It sparks discussion, challenges your assumptions, and leaves you pondering the big questions.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think it's time to wrap up this episode of the Drunken Zombies podcast.
Oh.
But before we go, I want to hear from our listeners.
Yeah.
Would you join the rebellion knowing the risks?
Right?
Or would you play it safe inside the dome? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we want to hear what you think.
And don't forget to rate and follow the Drunken Zombies podcast for your daily dose of zombie tales. Until next time, stay safe out there and keep those brains intact.
Cheers.